I like games, but the writing project is closer to sort of the creative heart of what I want to do, whereas games is more practical in terms of games can be actually more likely to make some sort of revenue, whereas the book, I think, probably is very unlikely to make much revenue, but it's more of something that I want to do for me. And so, since I have the worms and the worm business for revenue, my second priority gets to be something fun for me that I really want to do.
This is The Wilderness and the Wellspring, a podcast about exploring the creative process. I'm your host, Jeff Lunt. This is episode 23. I'm joined again by Kat, who's been on the podcast one other time. She made the leap from corporate work in the video games industry and then consulting, and now she's full-time running a business with her partner, working on a book, and still has ambitions for being an indie game developer. So we're going to check in with her and see how she's doing. Small side note, I'm a little under the weather, which you can probably tell my voice, but unfortunately, my side of this conversation is, I don't know what I did with the audio settings, but my voice in this podcast sounds like I'm underwater or something. I hope you can at least hear my questions and that kind of stuff. Kat comes through crystal clear and is great. She's a fantastic guest. So I hope you enjoy this, but I apologize about the audio on my side, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that I don't mess up the audio for next time. So please enjoy this episode. Kat, welcome back to Wilderness and the Wellspring. It's been about a year since we've talked. We've been keeping in touch over Blue Sky. You made the leap to go into your own business and working with your fiance now. It's very exciting. So what's been happening in the last year?
So in the last year, we had our first video go viral, which was pretty exciting. So it's just under 4 million views. And we learned a lot about making content, and primarily on Instagram and Facebook. And so there's been a lot of learning there, lots of small business, how to distribute product, how to improve package design, website, streamlining processes, those sorts of things, as well as I'm still working on my book. And so I go pretty much every morning to write and work on that. And that's been going really well. And then I also started making these little handmade notepads that I sell at a market, which has been exciting, and they're magnetic. So every time you show someone how that works, they're like, oh, that's actually really neat.
Yeah, so run me through the notebook. How did you arrive at designing it that way? And people can go to your website and order them?
Yeah, so I first started, I just wanted to make notepads. And so I decided, okay, well, all you need is paper and glue. So I got paper and glue and I made some notepads. And then I was like, wait, these need to go on the fridge. And then I was thinking through how to attach the magnets. Easiest one is just get a strip of magnet, attach it to the notepad, throw it on the fridge, but that doesn't look very nice. So I ended up working through trying a bunch of different magnet strengths, everything. And then basically now I just punch holes in a piece of cardboard that's thick and then insert the magnets and then fold it up nicely with paper and then glue the notepad to it. So now it's all sort of integrated nicely.
Yeah, thicker cardboard's is the backing basically that has the magnet in it.
Yeah, that's lined with either like a fabric paper, it's a book cloth, or just a thick cardstock that's printed with different designs.
Okay, so it's like a writable fridge magnet almost in a way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you can put them on the fridge. You can put them in these little notepads, take them with you. I've got some that are on keychains so that you can just like write notes on the go. And that part's been going really well, actually.
Is the viral video you mentioned, is that related to this product or something?
No, this is worms. So I have a lot of different projects always, forever. The ones that I'm the most dedicated to right now in terms of priority are number 1, writing the book. Number 2, the worm business, which is vermicompost and worms. So we actually have property out in Lockhart, Texas, where we have shipping containers that are decked out with air conditioning full of giant troughs of worms. And so I'll go out sometimes and we'll feed the worms. And we're running experiments and sending off labs to test our product. And then we package it. I make and design all the labels. And we're actually working on a new line of packaging right now. So basically, we've got the worm stuff going on. I'm working on a fantasy novel and I'm working on these notepads. And then in the very, very back burner is all the video game stuff that I had been more focused on last year.
Gotcha. So what is the worm stuff? Can we just dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. So it all started when my fiance, I don't know, like over 10 years ago, worked for an aquarium design group. And he was in charge of cleaning the fish tanks. And so this all really is related to worms, I promise, but we'll start at the very beginning. And goldfish are actually one of the dirtiest types of fish to keep in a tank, and you got to clean them constantly. And he was going to this one client and he'd be cleaning out the tanks and he'd be dumping the water in their garden, sort of in the back corner where nobody would care. And he noticed that after a few months, that specific corner of the garden was extremely lush and beautiful. And he's like, wait a minute, this goldfish water is actually really great for plants. So then he starts researching what is the best fertilizer for plants. So he goes down that rabbit hole and finds vermicomposting, which is basically the worms break down organic materials, which then makes nutrients available for the plants. And so the data on vermicomposting actually showed better results than the goldfish water. And so he started going down that rabbit hole. 10 years later, now we have, when I first met him, they were in the apartment. I lived in an apartment with worms. Then I kicked them out to the laundry room that was on the patio. And then eventually I got to kick them out to a shed. And now they have a decked out little shipping container on property that we rent outside of Austin. So it's been a fun process, but it's basically for organic fertility. And we're actually in a bunch of different retailers in Austin on shelves. So that's pretty exciting. So we get some big orders from retailers. And then our online store has also gone much bigger over the last year. It's about 3 times bigger than it was the year before. So we're constantly shipping out orders, packaging, those sorts of things.
So you're selling the fertilizer to anybody that wants to grow stuff, basically. So
yeah,
for gardens, and is it mostly is it like for vegetables or plants or trees or kind of all the above?
It's for everything. So vermicompost, the way that it's different from normal fertilizer is that normal fertilizer is a little more nutrient heavy, where it has the specific NPK, which is how they sort of define different fertilizers. Whereas vermicomposting is a little bit more of the base soil structure that's more focused on bacteria, fungi, and the sort of soil biology and making a healthy ecosystem. So it's more of a base healthy soil, which also helps to utilize the NPK nutrients, but it's more of your best bet is going to be to use this in addition with whatever fertilizer you want to use. And so there's a bunch of different scientific studies where basically worm castings on its own is really good, fertilizer on its own is really good, but if you add both of them, you're sort of filling out the whole soil picture and you're getting a nice base with biology that can activate and work and make your whole ecosystem function so that the plants can utilize all of the nutrients that you're giving them.
Okay. And this is so funny. I didn't know you were going to talk about this before.
I know.
But I started growing some stuff this year.
Yeah.
So NPK is nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's so funny. Do you ship nationally?
Yeah. We've actually shipped to Guam, Hawaii, and Alaska.
Okay. I might have to check it out because I've been buying fertilizer online and I started growing small trees, mostly from seedlings that just popped up in my yard.
Yeah.
Like I pulled probably 40 elm tree seedlings from my yard just that I didn't plant, that just showed up.
That's amazing.
And my back deck, it's just like a little area that we kind of stepped down in our tiny little yard, but I've got probably 40 plants and I'm overwintering them all right now.
Yes.
And so kind of learning about that stuff. That's really cool. Okay.
Yeah. And worm castings, it's basically like worm poop, like, manure, fertilizer. This is basically the worms process it. They're eating it and it goes through them and comes out the other end. So it's sort of like worm poop, but it's called worm castings or vermicompost. Anyway, there's a lot of studies about how it's actually really good for seedling growth. And it seems that the primary actor there is that the biology that's in there helps sort of protect the seedlings from certain diseases. So one of the studies I was reading, I can't remember the exact disease, but the seedlings ended up having a higher survival rate because they were more protected from this specific disease. And I think it sort of works like how if you have a good gut microbiome, you're able to sort of avoid certain pathogens because it's protecting you. So it's all sort of biology based. And then also it's important to note that for vermicompost, you want it to be fresh. It can, if it dries out, the bacteria and fungi can sort of have spores that then reactivate when they remoisten. But if you can keep it fresh and alive, it'll be more potent. And then if it sits out and is baked by the sun, you're going to end up killing them off, things like that.
Okay.
There's so much. And, I've only been doing this for 2 or 3 years now. And my fiance has been doing this for 10 years. So it's sort of like 10 years has now filtered through me. And I'm making all of these educational videos. So our video that got 4 million views was actually just, what do you feed worms? Yeah. And it's like, feeding worms is easy when you know the basics. Here's your cheat sheet. And then it goes into it. And so I'm starting to lose the thread here. But fertilizer, awesome. Lots of information.
Does anybody use it for terrariums too? Can it be like a self-contained thing as like a starter of an ecosystem?
You can. I don't know if that's common. I think more common. We have even gotten some so farmers use it a lot. So we actually share the property with a farmer who utilizes it. And then we sometimes get requests like, hey, could you get us 16 tons of worm castings? And we're like, no, we can't. I'm sorry. Then there was another farmer. So lots of agricultural use.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Okay. So to kind of get back to the big picture, right? You said that you're about 3 times bigger than you were a year ago. Did I hear that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And it depends on, because I had originally been calculating from April to April as our sort of working year. And I'm readjusting it to January so that it's a little more aligned with how people think about a year. So I can't remember the exact numbers from the switch, but basically the online store has grown like 10 times and retail has stayed about the same. So overall, it should be about a 3-time growth.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah.
That's
and it's
fantastic.
Yeah. And then of course, if you're doing online sales, there's, the wholesale prices for the retailers going to be lower. So like, yes, we have free shipping. And so it kind of ends up being similar in that the amount to ship ends up being similar to what the discount is for wholesale for retailers. And so it balances out, but you do make slightly more money on the individual online sales.
I see. Okay. And if you can get more distribution, I guess you're selling direct to consumers typically. They're not farmers typically.
Yeah, typically direct to consumers. A lot of people, and right now we actually sell quite a lot of worms. I think we have really good SEO maybe for worms specifically because it's just all over everything. And we have competitive prices for some of the other worm providers. So we end up being, I think, a good choice for people for worms. And people will use worms for doing their own vermicomposting. A lot of people want to just take their kitchen scraps and get them decomposed, or they want to throw them in their garden, or they want to feed them to creatures, their pets sometimes. So yeah, there's a lot of uses for worms too.
That's pretty cool. I remember you mentioning this last time we talked briefly, or maybe it was one of our offline discussions. I don't know, but yeah, that's pretty exciting. So that must be adding to you. Like made this leap to trying to work for yourself. You were holding down a part-time job. Last year, and you've kind of transitioned more toward full-time independent in a sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think I could have kept doing the part-time job, but with everything in the current layoff structure of everything happening, they were sort of like, hey, we're kind of thinking we don't need as many people. And I was like, that's fine. I don't need to be here. I'll go do something else. And I was like, please keep my friends. Like, I'll leave. So yeah, so it was just sort of a good timing that worked out for me and for them. And it gives me more time to sort of focus, but still I find myself sort of scattered between many projects. And like the worm stuff was all happening in the background of everything else last time I talked to you. But yeah, I think it didn't actually come up until an offline discussion when it started to sort of ramp up more. And my fiance needed more help with everything. Because before it had been sort of like, okay, I'll just pop in whenever as needed, work on some of the art. So I do all the art for the business. And now we're doing a lot more recording videos, editing videos, writing scripts, designing a completely new bag so that we can streamline that process. So I'm not printing out labels anymore and we can just package everything, zip it up and send it off. Yeah, there's just a lot.
Logistics and details and stuff.
Yeah.
And then taking on the marketing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that maybe haven't seen the previous episode, your part-time job was you were consulting in the games industry, right? Which is the industry you have a ton of experience in. Actually.
Yeah.
And that was your previous full-time profession.
Correct. Yeah. And then, well, the games industry right now, which we could probably talk about for a long time, but we probably should stay away from that for right now. But the people that I know in the games industry right now are definitely having a hard time finding positions, and a lot of people have been laid off. So like at my previous full-time job, the game shipped, and then if you're in the games industry, you know that this is common. If you're not, you probably don't understand this, but after a game ships is a key time when a lot of people get laid off because they needed everyone to build the game, and now the game is live. They don't need everyone. And so I ended up quitting, and then like 4 months later, they were like, hey, about half the people, bye. And then they sort of had to filter out, like, one person got a job not even at games. They went software, business software. And then there's one friend I have who's still looking for a job. So it's a little rough out there for the games industry.
Okay. I've tried to avoid discussions of AI on this podcast in general, just because it's everywhere. But I'll ask one small question. Do you feel like that's a factor in what's going on, or is it more just the normal sort of cycle of the project's done? That's how it's always kind of worked?
Yeah, I don't actually think AI is a factor. I think it's not good enough to do, it's not replacing the people doing the jobs that we were doing. It might be more of a factor in certain other subsections, but in the, programming an Unreal Engine, I don't think that it makes one developer that much more productive that they're replacing 5 developers. Like that developer was already, if they were going to be as productive as 5 developers. The AI is just another tool set that people use. And I don't think it actually has an effect on the layoffs. It just is like a thing that people talk about.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the background there. You made this leap to go. When did you stop doing the part-time consulting? How long ago was that?
It was July, or wait, no. Sorry, that was when yeah, I think it was July. That sounds right.
We're recording this in December, so almost
it was.
Year-ish.
Yeah, about that. Time is just sort of weird now that I don't have regular job, and sometimes I forget what day of the week it is. Because everything is just in picture of, hey, this needs to get done, this needs to get done. And it's not like the weekends are work days and the work days are weekends. And it's just sort of whenever something needs to get done, it needs to get done. And then you hop on it. And so like even months, it all just sort of flies by and blurs together.
How would you describe like the difference in that structure? I mean, like when you're working a normal sort of during the week job, I think we all kind of take for granted, like there's just an inherent schedule you assume.
Yeah.
It's at least Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
Sometimes late nights and stuff. But you basically, on one hand, you're kind of free to structure anyway, but then you've also got customers and stuff that they come with their own deadlines. And so what's that been like?
I think it's just different. I love it because I love to take an immediate problem and solve it all the way through to its conclusion. And I don't love being stuck in a box when I like when I was working, I would need to have a bunch of different projects so that I could knock out the easy ones first and sort of roll that momentum into doing the bigger ones. Back to sort of the main point, the having to sit in a certain space for 8 hours and feeling like I can't leave, even if it's not that something important needs to happen. I like the flow of adjusting to the needs of the work. And so something will pop up the night before and it's like, we have to solve this problem right now. We did, or we like forgot something. We didn't put it in the calendar. Oh my God, we have to solve this problem. All right. So we just go, we solve it, we do it. And so you're maybe not always able to be free with your time because, you know, there's certain times of year where you're busier, you're having to package orders, but you don't have to be somewhere when there's nothing to be done. You can work when there's work that needs working, and you can rest when there's no work that needs working. As opposed to literally all the work needs to happen between like 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. And so it's more freedom to allocate my energy towards the work when it, and since the way that I work is always, if something is an immediate need, my brain automatically wants to solve it. So it's actually very convenient for me that working in this sort of free form, my creativity and wanting to problem solve just kicks on when it's needed and then sort of relaxes when it's not needed, which then also opens a whole new question of how do you make sure that you keep momentum and you're achieving your goals over the long term if you're not really turning on the productivity engine. I feel like I'm talking too long, but basically I'm getting into sort of like firefighting mode versus not firefighting mode.
Okay, so I'm trying to, I think I understand what you're saying. Let me ask a couple probing questions here. So on the one hand, the work and the customer base drive when things need to be done. There's zero performative stuff like you're just here in this meeting or this schedule just because.
Yeah.
But I would imagine, first of all, there's a seasonality you kind of hinted at that certain times of the year are busier. And it feels like on the marketing side and on the growth side, you're sort of like putting fuel in the engine, but it could theoretically get away from you if you grow a little too fast, or I mean that's a good problem to have, but
yeah.
At what point do you, like, there's no quarterly plan, right? Like in corporate, there would be, where everybody's like just constantly doing the thing that feeds the plan, right?
Yeah.
So how much time do you feel like is firefighting versus, or maybe more like creative problem solving, like you said, versus growing and planning, that kind of stuff?
I think it's probably 75% like kind of firefighting. And it's not necessarily firefighting wherein you waited until the last minute to do something, but it's more firefighting in that, you know, an order comes in on Monday, you need to make sure that you pack and ship it before Wednesday. And so now that's your sort of firefighting is I need to do this before this time. And then since it's not literally in our apartment with us, we have to manage the schedule of when we go out to feed the worms and when we're packing orders and making sure that they ship out on time. And then if it's ordered on a Friday, you actually wait until Monday because of the days that they're not actually working at the post office.
So to make what might be a bad analogy to your game experience, it seems like you're in a different game loop now, right?
Yes, I am in a different game loop now. Yes, because instead of having a feature that needs to be shipped, it's individual orders that need to be filled, which is actually quite satisfying because it's small, easy problems to solve that you can just keep doing. And then the question is, how do you make sure that you're making forward progress on your large goals? And what we've decided after sort of analyzing it is that it seems like we're getting the most benefit from our social media marketing educational content. So we're going towards more educational content. And so we have sort of a schedule of we need to release 2 a month. And now we're trying to work on more long form videos. And so that's sort of the long-term plan, is keep increasing educational content and see if that still continues to bring in more customers. And if not, then we'll have to reevaluate that and reassess. So that's sort of how we're doing short-term versus long-term right now.
Okay. So it's the kind of thing where you're creating educational content that's branded with
Mm-hmm.
the worm business, and you're teaching people stuff that they're curious about, they're naturally going to search for. So you don't necessarily have to do as much like a marketing spend. It's like you're trying to get in front of the questions people want to have answered. And then you're also mentioning, hey, and if you're looking for this solution, we also sell XYZ.
Yeah. And we actually haven't done much, hey, and if you're looking for this solution, we've actually done a lot of just, here's information that if you're in this space, you'd be interested in knowing. And that has brought people in because we're giving them something that they want. And I've read a lot about how people use free educational content and sorts of things. And I'm not sure, it feels like it shouldn't work as well as it has been. So I wonder if maybe there's some other metric that we don't understand is occurring that is driving it. But for right now, that's the best data point that we have. So we're just going to keep doubling down on it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, whatever's working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to contrast this with some of your creative goals, like the novel, the book, and the video game stuff. What's my question there? Like, I imagine it's more of a creative vision kind of project where you've got a thing that you're building toward that you'll eventually have out there for people to try, or in the case of a book, to read. But it's like a lot of work to get there, as opposed to, this seems more like an engine that's running and you can like run it a little faster and build it up. And it's like you mentioned, it's super satisfying to be able to do all these little micro tasks, like packaging the order, shipping, and that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that I mean, it's got to be great to have made the leap from salary job to supporting each other on this stuff. Do you feel that you miss anything about the creative work, or it's just a matter of balancing, saying like, well, this is where my priorities are, I'm going to spend X time on this and X time on that?
I think there are a lot of very nice things about working in gaming, in that you're working with a lot of creative people towards common goals. The frustration is that sometimes they're goals that maybe don't make as much sense because they're monetarily shareholder based, but the overall creative people working on solving problems together, I think I miss some of the collaboration, because when you're going on your own right now, it's me and my fiance, and sort of we have different strengths and we hold up the different pillars somewhat alone. And so we do work together, but there's certain aspects, like all of the art, that I basically just am working on alone. So I guess I kind of miss having a team that's working on the same piece. And so you have more creative input together. And, hanging out with people, going to lunch, things like that are part of the side aspect of working in games or corporate. But I really enjoy working on something that we care deeply about and are invested in the success of, which you are that way at a corporate job, but it's a lot less because you don't necessarily have incentives tied to the success of the overall product. It's more tied to individual deliverables on timelines and deadlines and things like that. And so it gives us the freedom to be the person who makes the decision on what we need to do to move everything forward. And so we're always actually aligned on the decisions being made within the organization, as opposed to sort of questioning the leadership or any other sort of thing like that. Like, we decide what happens and we're moving it, and it lives or dies with us, and we're responsible for everything, and we have to get it off the ground.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember last time we talked to you, talked about how some of your role had started to turn into being the person that's organizing and taking notes and making sure that everybody's on sort of on the same train, heading the same place. Now that it's like primarily just the two of you, do you find that, did you have any moments where you like had like super heavy processes that just felt natural from your job that you tried to apply to this and you're just like, oh, this is actually a much simpler problem? Or did it just feel much more natural?
I think I tend...
Did you break out a Jira board?
No, I didn't. I didn't make him point his stories or anything. I do tend to overthink the individual optimization of certain activities. And so perhaps I was more pro, hey, let's think through how we can optimize this. But I've learned that in the startup phase of a business, it doesn't really matter because everything is going to change at the next phase. Because if you're still growing, you don't really need to fix this step because next year you're going to be doing something completely different and everything changes so fast. For example, we first started out with stamps as our label. And so I had designed these stamps, which basically are just, black and white. You dip it in ink, you stamp the bag. And I thought that this is going to be like the thing we were going to use for multiple years. And then actually that's not true. And then we changed to these labels. And then I designed the labels. And then actually that wasn't the thing either. And then I designed better full package labels that had more information, but that wasn't the end goal. And so it's sort of more adjusting to everything being ephemeral, and you need to solve the problem. And yes, you want to be efficient. You don't want to waste money, but it's actually okay if you are inefficient and waste money, as long as you don't waste too much, within reason. But it doesn't actually matter about being perfectly efficient at the small scale if you're trying to grow, because the problems that you're solving next year are going to be completely different problems. And it's only once you get to sort of a engine that's operating and not growing that I think you should worry about optimizing the problems.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it could be really easy to focus on, say, the branding or a logo or a design of a specific thing. But it's like if you've got customers coming in, you're making orders, you're making profit, then you can always improve on that design later. And if it, I don't know, increases your conversion rate by 0.5%, whatever, that's even better when you have 100,000 customers than worrying about it when you only have 100 or 1,000, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about, okay, to go back to the creative stuff. So what you mentioned that your novel is the primary creative project that's right behind the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
How's that going?
It's what I work on pretty much every day. Except if I'm going to visit family, I find that I don't really work on it much just because I'm spending time with them. And it's hard to be like, actually, hold on, let me ignore everyone for 4 hours while I go write. But when I'm at home, I work on it every day in the morning for at least 2 hours. And it is teaching me a lot about everything in life. And I think it gets into sort of so when I was really little, background story, I would be so worried about writing something correctly that I wouldn't even start writing. This is second grade. And I would have a blank paper and I would be crying and it would be leading towards the end of a 30-minute period. And my teacher would come over and be like, no, you just have to start. So anyway, writing is sort of a battle that I've had my whole life because I want it to be the way that I want it to be. And when I read it back to myself, it's never quite what I wanted. And so I've been rewriting and rewriting and replotting and replotting and rewriting and rewriting for years now. And so 6 months ago, I basically decided to split the book into 4 pieces. And so I'm going to release it in 4 acts because there's actually a 2-year gap in between each of these. And so instead of making it all one book, I'm going to release it in small segments so that I actually finish. Because the whole reason that this is the top priority is because it's a project that I haven't actually finished. And I need to finish it because I just need to show myself that I can finish it. But it's quite difficult because it's never as good as you want it to be. And there's always more work that can be done.
They could always polish it one more time or,
yeah,
rephrase this thing. Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Has that been you mentioned the challenge of the second grade, fighting writings from an early age. Are there other examples where you feel like this drive to make it match your vision is kind of a theme that plays out in other areas?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty much everywhere. I tend to spend too much time thinking and not enough time doing. And you actually learn a lot in the process of doing. And so it's hard to keep going and doing when my brain automatically goes into thinking mode. But I just need to keep doing it, because in the process of doing it, you'll start to learn and have new thought pathways about how to get it done. And it's like any creative project, I have to just sort of accept that it's not going to be as nice as I want it to be, because it needs to be done. Like, I can't spend forever, especially with the business. And I'm better at it with the business because it's more tied to the actual, like, oh, well, we need to get this done. Whereas the book is just something that is a personal project that I want to get done. But the business is like, oh, no, we need this done like ASAP so that we can print the new labels. We need this done so that we can make some process easier. And so then it's a lot easier to just sort of be like, all right, it's fine. I'll accept it in the state that it is and ship it, even though I feel like it's not done yet. And then by the time you ship it and it's been out there, you're like, okay, actually, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Like, it's actually fine.
It's having it crossed off the to-do list is its own satisfaction. Just being,
Yeah.
It snaps you out of that analysis mode.
Yeah.
Hard deadlines always, and that's one good thing about them for sure.
Yeah. Have you found any of that in your work?
Yeah, I mean, on the game side, that's the main creative thing I do is write software for myself, and I find that the most satisfying things are those little tasks, but I have to be very careful to make sure that I'm not just crossing things off to cross them off, that it's leading to an end goal. But I also have to make sure that that end goal is not too far away.
Yeah.
And a good example is like, I joined this online Slack community of like online game developers, pretty small community, which I really liked. I didn't want to join some giant Discord server with 10,000 people in it. Yeah. I wanted to like kind of find a group I could connect with. And since joining them maybe 4 years ago, I've talked about probably 4 different game demos. And one of them I released, but it was the one I started last and was the smallest scope, simplest thing. And I finished it and I got it out there. And even when I wish I still had the screenshots from version 1, because it looks completely different. And I wound up just, like you said, like I released it and then I told people about it and I took some feedback and I polished it and I said, hey, check that out. And it got a lot easier once it was out there.
Mm-hmm.
Very different than a book, of course. Once it's out, it's out. Like you're not
Yeah.
you're gonna go back and be like, let me send you a new version of the book.
I mean, you could.
I guess you could.
That's
That
not
would
the
be
way
very
it's done,
different.
but
It's not that people don't release second and third editions, but yeah, not quite as much as software. But yeah, I found that was very powerful for me. And so it completely changed a couple of things in my mind. One was, I was like, man, I'm swearing off of humongous multi-year creative projects for myself, because every single time I get caught in that, like I never quite ship.
Yeah.
And I always feel like I'm close, but it's like, not really.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just started working on another project where I was giving it my real focus maybe a month or 2 ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting pretty close to demo. So I want to not wait more than, in this case, probably February or March. I want to have something playable out there. That's my goal. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's the long pull, and then it feels like you've had so long to work on it, so you have even more pressure that it needs to be higher quality. Whereas if you bucket yourself a certain amount of time, you can at least feel like, oh, well, it's not like I spent 3 years on it. Whereas if you spend 3 years on it, well, you did spend 3 years on it. So
yeah, I've got one of those projects that I technically started in 2017, and it was the big project that like never quite ships. And I was like, am I ever going to finish this? And then at some point I stopped asking myself that. And I said, it's not finished. I'm going to work on other things. If I come back to it, great. Because one thing I did learn through that process is that I had this fear in the back of my head that if I didn't ship the huge thing that I somehow, like, that was bad, that reflected poorly on me or whatever. And instead I'm just like, hey, it's not shipped. So what? Like, let's ship something. The creative drive always comes back if I'm ready to listen to it. And I would rather be someone who shipped, 3 small games than 0.
Yeah.
So.
I think that also gets into sort of that, I feel like I wasted time, negative thought, which is actually not correct, because all of the time you spend working on that huge project, you're learning new skills in game development, or in my case, writing. And so it's like I've already written like 2 books that I've deleted and rewritten. It's like I learned a lot in writing all of those words, even if I ended up deleting them. Yeah.
I'll just think for a second. So in our brief discussion leading up to this privately, you mentioned that after making the leap to go independent, that it's been totally worth it. But also in our previous episode, before you were fully kind of funding your life through your direct work, it certainly you seemed super confident that it was going to be worth it then, but you like weren't completely floating off and detached.
Yeah.
Was it a big I think people always picture this sort of heroic story where it's like, oh, there was this one moment that made everything. Was it like that for you, or did you just like one day you're just like, it's enough? Like you mentioned, the place you were consulting was like, I don't think we need you right now, and you're just like, oh, that just kind of aligns.
Yeah. No, I think it's not. It's, if anything, it would be something that slowly fills pennies in a jar until you have an overflow and you're like, wait, why was I put it like, what was I doing with the jar? Like, I don't need the jar. I need like some other system to hold these pennies. I don't know. It's small little pieces will add up until it's painful enough where you are that you're willing to go through the pain of switching to a new mode of being by being independent. Like you can't be comfortable in the full-time job completely. Now, there's a lot of comfort in having a salary and money and income, which is not a small thing. And so, I had 2 years of savings so that I would be able to hold off if we had issues generating some revenue. But you really have to be done with the corporate life, I think. Otherwise, I bet I would have gone back because it was comfortable. But for me, that mode of being was never really comfortable. It would sort of, we talked about this last time, is it's sort of cycles of, I hate everything. This sucks. I'm really bad at my job, to, oh my God, actually, I'm really good. Everything's amazing. Wow, people are so nice. You know what? I get a good set. Like, everything's great. And it's these fluctuations. But the little dips, I would say for me in corporate, were much worse than they are here trying to make it work for ourselves.
Okay. Yeah. I can remember, like, after I released the only game that I have that's out there, like, it definitely lost money. So, like, financially, I'm like, that sucks. But yeah. I do remember being so worried about turning on payments because for the first 3 or 4 months, it was just free.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, I think I can see people are playing this consistently over time. I think I've got a small user base that's like, when somebody really likes this, they're really into it. And they play and play and play. It's like, okay, I think I'm at the point I can turn on payments and someone's going to pay me something. And it did. It worked. But I was also worried somehow that, like, before I did it, I was like, well, once I turn on money, everything's going to change in terms of my stress level or whatever. Mm-hmm. And what I found is that it started to feel really natural. Like when something came up, or, it's hosted, the game is online, it's hosted in the cloud, and like there'd be some vendor outage and the game is just down for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. I had to take like a different approach to it than I would at work. At work, of course, like it's like, hey, get on that right now.
Yeah.
And that was my initial reaction, but I would be like, okay, this vendor's down. Do I have an alternate right now, or is it just down? Okay, do I just need to tell people that it's down right now and it'll probably be back up in a few hours? Is there really anything I can do? And in a couple of cases, the answer was, nope, nothing you can do other than let people know. And I was like, okay, that's all I have to do.
Yeah.
And that would happen, thankfully, not often, but, you know, little blips here and there, 10, 20 minutes. And I eventually got comfortable with that feeling of like, it's okay not to feel like this has to be, you know, five nines of uptime kind of approach. And that was a bit of a shift for me because so much of my professional work is like, that's the where the bar is.
I think that makes a lot of sense. There's also, you sort of learn how to approach challenges in life differently. When you're in the corporate world, people call it a rat race. And I think it really kind of is, because you're sort of conditioned to these triggers of the morning meeting. Hey, there's this huge problem. It's like, okay, actually, it wasn't that big of a problem. It was a vendor outage. And, you know, we just need to communicate to the people that it's this service so that they know, or we need to flip to our backup or whatever it is. And when you're sort of the leader or the decision maker, the responsible party, you learn more about how to take more ownership, more responsibility almost, which ironically makes it easier to handle the ownership and responsibility. I don't really know exactly how to explain it, but there's sort of a mental shift in how, when a problem hits the business, you deal with it differently as the top level versus just an employee who's being told by someone else, hey, go fix this thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of people talk about small businesses and independent people and how they like the personal connection. They like knowing the person they're getting services from. And logically, of course, that makes sense. You know, I go to the local bakery or, you know, someplace like the gardening center that's just down the street from me. And of course, I like knowing the people there. But for some reason, I always had it in my head that like, no, it's different for me. People are going to expect me to act like a corporation. And I just found that it, yeah, kind of like what you said, you just have to get out of that mindset a little bit, because you're a small business. If you're a reasonable, nice person, if you're a real human being and they're not just talking to, you know, kind of a faceless, whatever, people are pretty chill. Like, I remember the first time after I turned on payments and somebody reported a bug that was like pretty game breaking for them. And my initial reaction, of course, was like, oh, crap. Here we go. What did I sign myself up for? You know, can't believe I, you know, created this bug, all this stuff. But then it did take me a couple of days to fix. But first of all, I just emailed the person right back. I was like, oh, yeah, that's definitely a bug. Hey, sorry about that. Let me look into it. It's probably going to take me a little time to figure it out. And they're like, yeah, no problem. And then I rolled out the fix and I said, hey, here's some free credits, you know? And it was nice that I could make all those decisions. I could set the timeline. I could communicate with the customer. And I could also just say like, hey, I appreciate you playing. Here's some, you know, here's a discount. And and then it was solved. And the person was just like, fantastic. Thank you. You know, I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't such a big deal, you know?
Yeah. We've also found it's customer service. If something goes wrong, it's actually not an issue. The issue is when when you don't communicate. So if something goes wrong, a customer reaches out. If you don't communicate to them, hey, we're going to look at this. Hey, we're going to refund you. Hey, we're going to send you a new order. Hey, we're going to do this. Or even like, hey, this is why this happened. Like, the communication is really what people want. And then after you communicate, then it usually makes the problem better. And then they end up having an even more positive experience because they had a problem and you solved the problem. And so it makes so much sense why people have the sort of top tier customer service models where they're just like, whatever it is, we're going to fix it. So like Amazon, you can always return stuff, at least in my experience. It's like Amazon's really easy to deal with. And that's one of the things that keeps people going to Amazon, is because when they have a problem, Amazon fixes it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting example, because you always assume that they would kind of lose that. And in my experience, they haven't really. I mean, people can complain about other aspects of it, but you're right. Like so many times, especially if what you ordered is so small, they'll just be like,
okay,
literally keep it. Like it's going to cost us more for you to send it back, or give it to somebody. Yeah. They're just like, we don't care. Yeah.
And that's also sort of business is, even if you're going to lose money because you have to reship something or replace something, it's actually worth it in the long run, because if you're not taking care of your customers, like it just makes everything worse. And so like losing money on a couple of orders is not a big deal in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I even had an experience where I ordered something really large from them, like physically large and heavy, and they had to ship it freight, and it showed up and it was broken.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is broken. And they're like, no problem. We'll send another truck out. And it must have cost them like $200.
Yeah.
And they were just like, it was never an issue. They're just like, okay.
Yeah. Like, oh, sure. Yeah.
Do it. I was like, that's insane. Because part of, I think the assumption when you interact with businesses that get bigger and bigger is sometimes they can feel more and more penny pinching. And that just sucks.
Yeah. And I think it has nothing to do with business size. Some small businesses are penny pinching and some large are penny pinching. And it just depends on the business.
Okay. So you mentioned that you took this larger project of the book and you're going to break it up into 4 pieces. So where are you in that process as far as releasing part 1?
So I told myself that I wanted to release it this summer, which meant that so I had finished the first draft of the whole book. And then that was this last summer, maybe. And I decided that I would break it up into 4 pieces and just release the first part. Because it took so long just to get the first draft done that I decided I needed to find a way to release something faster. So I switched to just focusing on the first quarter of the book. And I set a schedule for when to finish the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th draft and when to release it. I am behind on the 2nd draft because I was supposed to have finished last week, and I still have 2 more sections to go through. And I found it's a similar problem that I've had with the whole book structure as a whole, is that I feel that the emotion of the characters and the arcs of the characters aren't fleshed out enough, especially because if you're releasing just the first quarter as its own piece, there's a few different ways you need to go about it, because you can't wait to sort of pay off some of the development till later. Like you still can, but there's a few things that need to be tightened up to make it more cohesive as one little piece. And so I've been sort of struggling to build it back up in a way that makes sense for the sort of the middle end. The end makes sense. The beginning, it makes sense, but there's sort of this middle end that I always struggle with. But I think I'm going to release it this summer, sort of regardless. Like, because there are words on the page, but I just need to wrangle them.
Yeah. What method are you going for publishing? Are you doing self-published?
I was actually, since I've been doing these little notepads, I was actually going to bind it myself and do basically my own book binding and make maybe 100 copies, and then take them to some local small bookstores and see if they'll do consignment, and maybe someone will buy them. I don't know. I also sort of started trying to do social media for the book, but I have a harder time doing that for myself and for my own project than for the worm business, which is also my business, but feels more like my fiance. Like I have a really easy time trying to help someone else achieve their goals. But when it's my goals, I get all froze up. I'm like, and then I don't know where to go or what to do. And I start second guessing everything and overthinking everything. Whereas if someone else says, here's what I think, then I'd have 10 opinions for them on what I think will work or what I think they could improve on. But when it's me, it just sort of freezes over.
I have that problem a lot too. It's so, you kind of touched on this about one of the aspects of a regular office job you miss is the collaboration. And sometimes, just saying the thing and then having somebody give you immediate feedback on it is so much easier than having to have all the opinions completely within yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be tough.
Yeah.
But,
And it's also interesting with writing because so much of it is internal, and to get even someone to test read it, because, even the first quarter of it is 30,000 words. And that's no small amount of time for someone to invest in reading. And so, I've given it to a few family members, and I've made my fiance sit down while I read it out to him. But you can only get so much done because it's such a large time investment. And so I've only really done the first few chapters with people. And some of the later pieces are all still just only me. They're they're on my backup and they're in my brain, but nobody else has really seen them. So that's sort of intimidating.
how do you think it will work? This is a few steps ahead. So if you're just not in this headspace, that's fine too. But you've had your social media accounts for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first found you online, your focus was more the creative stuff, I think.
Yeah.
So do you have a take on like when the right time to be promoting stuff is, as opposed to, well, yeah, I'll just start there, I guess.
I would say the right time is all the time, every time, anytime that you can. I think that so with the asterisk, that quality is of utmost importance, because from what we've noticed, at least from the worm account, is essentially higher quality content receives more views and more engagement and more likes. And quality will mean different things on different platforms because there's different types of users there. For example, for Instagram, it's a lot of very visually appealing, colorful. And then the word that I hated when I first started doing social media, which is hooks, I have come to accept is extremely important. And it has to do with sort of these little snippets of attention and how you direct them. And there's tons of different resources online that talk about all of this, but it's basically sort of engaging curiosity, keeping people interested, telling them something that they want to know, teaching them something that they didn't realize, changing a perspective. It's all of these little pieces, and I'm not even an expert on it. But when I first started in social media, I was all, ew, hooks are horrible, clickbaity things. And now I just sort of, it's a shiny scale that you flap in the water to tell the fish that something interesting is over here. And then you pay off the shiny scale with some sort of food or something. And so you need to have quality, but you also need to have visibility. And visibility involves being present more often. And so I think that if I were going to do it, quote unquote, right, I would be posting much more frequently. But I just have such a hard time deciding what to post and how to post it that I end up not posting anything.
Do you find it's easier to do social media posts for the worm business than for your creative stuff?
Yeah, it's really easy to do the worm business now. We also have a whole catalog of footage built up now. So we have tons of different sort of worm reels and plants and application and gardening, food scraps. And so now it's a little more like just piecing everything together. Whereas for writing, I have a little bit of footage, but it's like, well, do I focus on writing the book? Do I focus on lore? Do I focus on process? Do I focus on this? Okay, well, also I have these little notepads. Should I post about the notepads? Well, everyone says that you need a niche, and it's like, well, my brain is scattered in so many different directions, and I need to pick something, but I can't pick something, but it's a disaster.
Yeah, I definitely found also that it was easier. Like I was trying to do the thing where I was posting content about the game demos I was working on. But once I actually had something out there, it was like, well, it's a lot easier to talk about something that someone can click on a link and go try right now. And I'm looking forward to that second demo because for me, it's just like, because I do the same thing. I'm like, what do I talk about? And so I wind up just like not talking about much.
Yeah. And I think that there's actually a lot of power in some of the early pieces. So, for example, there's a person on Blue Sky. They're on a couple other places too, but I follow them on Blue Sky, a Lucian dev who makes this chicken game. Let me make sure. Lucian. Dang it, now I can't find it. Anyway, there's this chicken game. And so he's been going through the whole process of making this chicken game. The game is not shipped yet, but he's going through modeling the chicken, and he'll just show the chicken walking, or like he'll show the model splayed out, or he'll show like running through one little section of the course. And I find all of that really interesting. And so that's an example I can look at and say, okay, here's something I find really interesting. And it's not the finished product, it's the development. And so sometimes there's something that we can do by showing off the development. It's just like, what are people going to find interesting? I've been living in this world for so long. Like, okay, yeah, there's dragons. Okay, but they're not regular dragons. They're dragons that are like Chinese dragons almost, except that they're not like that. They're more like lobsters because they have crustacean plating. And then, okay, well, they fly through the sky with gravity magic. And like, but does anybody care about that? I don't know.
Yeah, because in the more corporate side of video games, it's more like they don't really, at least last time I was paying really close attention, like
Yeah.
it's more like there's this long work to get something built, and they don't really start talking about it until the marketing team and everybody has like an approximate release date, and then there's kind of a big push. But I don't see a lot of the big publishers doing this sort of like devlog style stuff. You know?
I think they can also get into trouble for legal reasons. So I worked with, I guess I don't need to say, but basically there was a big IP. And so there were stock price considerations. And so showing too much of the development of features where perhaps maybe we might end up cutting a feature or other things like that. They have to go through legal to figure out when they can release information so that they don't like adjust the whatever the stock price is. I can't remember what the terminology is, but basically
so
there's a bunch of legal.
It's like something that's could materially impact the stock price. You have to be really careful what you say. Okay.
Yeah. Or like everyone, you're working on a game and everyone in the community is like, we haven't heard anything about this game. Like they're going to delay it. They're going to delay it. Like blah, 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 blah. But you can't tell anyone that they're going to delay it because legal has said, no. You need to wait 2 months to tell them that you're going to delay it. And it's like, no, we need to tell them now. So like they're prepared, but legal is like, no. You need to wait until after the like blackout period or something. I don't know. But there's lots of rules.
Yeah. That suddenly makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
And so like the devs want to tell you, the devs want to communicate with you, but they are not allowed to do that. And I mean, also you as a dev, you don't want to directly communicate with players because there's so many problems there, but it would be nice if the company would communicate to the players, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, I can understand. I assume a lot of this comes out partly because of the publicly traded nature, right? So like if you've got a big publicly traded company, some of your employees have stock, all that stuff. There's all these rules about when, even you as an employee of the stock, when you can trade stuff. There's all these rules about like, you can't trade on certain information that you may have access to as an employee and all that stuff. So yeah. And the blackout period that you mentioned kind of, that made sense. Like, you can't release that information because there's an earnings call coming up, or like people could use this to game the stock or whatever.
And I always just find it so funny because everyone always talks about, the devs of the game, blah, 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 the decisions the devs made. And a lot of the times it's decisions that the managers made. Like, no, it's not the developers. The developers want to help you. The developers didn't want to implement gotcha boxes. They had to. But anyway, back on the book, I basically am going to ship something, if not this summer, then the fall. And even if it's not finished in my mind, it will be published somehow. Because I think that I will get it done if I make myself do it. Otherwise, I'll just spend forever because I'll keep having an idea. I'll add a character. I'll remove something. I'll change the setting. I'll think of a new way that the magic should work, or a clarification, or, oh, actually, I made this, but it doesn't make sense because of XYZ. So I need to readjust the whole storyline for that piece because whatever it is, logical consistency. But there's plenty of books that break certain logical consistencies and they're all fine. So I just need to finish it.
So, okay, that makes perfect sense. And then you also mentioned some video game projects you've been toying with in the background as well. I don't know about you, but for me, I really only have priority 1 and 2, and everything else is just sort of everything else. It's like, I'm probably never going to get to number 3 until it's number 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how the game stuff is for you right now?
That's how it is right now. It was pretty sad. It was maybe this last summer when I decided to release the book in quadrants that I basically had to decide, okay, you know what? This book is taking me too long to write. I need to finish it before I think about anything else. And well, first I listed out my priorities, and games. I like games, but the writing project is closer to sort of the creative heart of what I want to do, whereas games is more practical in terms of games can be actually more likely to make some sort of revenue, whereas the book, I think, probably is very unlikely to make much revenue, but it's more of something that I want to do for me. And so since I have the worms and the worm business for revenue, my second priority gets to be something fun for me that I really want to do. And then games, unfortunately, ended up sort of on the back burner. And that one's always a fun one because I told myself last year that I was going to ship something by August of this year, even if it was a teeny tiny game. And I didn't end up doing that. And so that's always kind of rough because you want to be able to do the things that you tell yourself that you're going to do, but you also want to adapt. But I tend to adapt probably more often than I should, and I just need to stick with something. So I decided to stick with the book. And so that's the one that I'm going to finish. And then we'll come back to games, maybe, depending on everything else. But
yeah, I feel that. Like, I still primarily corporate work, and then, I do the game stuff. It's probably number 2 for me. Number 3 is the podcast, which is why there's like all of 4 or 5 episodes a year.
Yeah.
But I actually like this a lot. I like interviewing and getting better at interviewing and talking to interesting people. And then my number 1 hobby actually used to be photography years ago. But somewhere around, I think, 14 or 15,000 images, I just sort of started to be like, I kind of plateaued with the kind of photography I was doing. And I was going to try a couple of other things and then just like never really branched out. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard because we have so many different curiosities and interests. Only so much time.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we can do, but you sort of trade mastery for jack of all trades. And there's a lot to be gained from a wide breadth of experience. But there's also a lot to be gained from that narrow spectrum. But I've determined of myself that I'm not a narrow spectrum person. I'm a generalist. And so, yeah, I'll just keep doing whatever is piquing my curiosity behind the number 1 and number 2 priorities, which are locked in. But yeah, I think what's going to be really hard is after shipping the first quadrant is finishing the second, third, and fourth. Because I'll be like, yes, I've done it. I've done 1. And then I'll have to go through the whole thing for the rest of it.
Yeah. Are you hedging your bets by writing the first one so that if you only release the first one, it's sort of a complete book, or you just you'll be like, no, it's fine. I'll go all in.
It won't be fully complete because there's a prologue that leads up to there's the whole book exists within a frame, which is from another character's point of view. And so without the epilogue, the prologue doesn't really make sense. So I could just leave it off of the initial publication of the first quarter, but I think that it still adds context of like, here's something dramatic that happens 8 years from now. And then it goes back in time to 8 years before. And so you still have some sort of flavor of the whole point of the story, but the ending of the first quarter ends with a huge climax. So I think it actually makes a good ending to a book. The one I'm more worried about standing on its own is actually the second quarter, but I'm sure I'll solve that problem when I get to it. One problem at a time.
Classic season 2 trap.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like maybe I should just make it 3 sections, because stuff happens in the second quadrant, but a lot of it is sort of almost like it's not a filler episode, because it still has a lot of character development and changes and important events, but they're not so important that if you removed them, the rest of the plot wouldn't make sense. But you might need it for the character development to make sense. I'll have to sort of reassess that.
Okay. So other than the fact that you just revealed it to everybody that there's these secret 4 parts, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun. You'll accept whatever comes out, right? So long as you're happy with it, basically.
Yeah. I just have to figure my initial working title was Madrigal of Misfortune, because it's sort of like a tragedy almost. But the acronym for that is MOM. And so I decided I have to change the name of the book because that's a terrible acronym. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Next year may be in a completely different position. But I'm trying to just sort of do more and overthink less. So hopefully I'll have more stuff done, even if it's not necessarily the way that I wanted it. I don't know. How is everything with Stranger Sips going?
Fine. I mean, I'm super glad that I put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
People still play it every day, but the revenue's stopped. I have like a daily sort of like free credits you can get every day that you log in. So I have like a small dedicated group of people that still play, but it's effectively done, I think.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking a lot lately about, well, do I add features? Do I release more of a sequel? Do I just do something completely different? And so the next game I'm doing is a micro RTS that's web-based that you can play with a gamepad. So something completely different. I think I learned a lot about, first of all, marketing and getting all that stuff going and having an actual business with revenue and all that stuff, even though it wasn't profitable. I think the AI stuff was, because it's AI powered, basically. I think that was an interesting thing to dabble into, but it was also wound up being an incredibly crowded space that has a ton of incredibly well-funded companies behind it.
Marketing budgets.
Yeah, they're like taking out Super Bowl ads and stuff. I mean, not that, obviously people play different games for different reasons, but yeah, it was never going to be some huge success. It wasn't going to be Farmville, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I want to go back to my roots in terms of really focusing on tight arcade style gameplay, good loops, fun stuff where you can play and get better and better, and also maybe like level up your account somehow, but like in a very light way. Yeah, I'm going to go do this RTS thing for a little while. And Stranger Sips is fine. I look back at it now as, hey, I did the thing. That's fantastic. So a lot of the doubts that were keeping me from shipping something have now pretty much gone. Yeah. And now I feel like I leveled up as a game developer, because now I can say I have released a game rather than I want to release a game.
Yeah.
So,
which is a big one. It's like the statistics are crazy on the number of people that only release one game or don't release the game. But this could also get into another interesting topic, which is sort of, for making a game, there's making a game that you want to make. There's making a game that other people want to play. And there's making a game that you want to make that other people want to play that also makes money. And sort of, how do you find the right concept for that? Or do you just make a game that you think will make money? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, I've unconsciously thought about that a lot, actually. I think the micro RTS, but what I mean by that is like, imagine StarCraft, but way simpler. So like super easy to pick up, but it has some depth to it. It's just not insanely complex or insanely competitive. But something you could pick up and learn to play in a few minutes. I love that format. My heart is still in some really old, like Atari 2600 games. Like a couple months ago, I was playing basketball on the Atari 2600, which is literally 1v1, and it's a 4-way controller with one button. So imagine trying to design basketball game inside of those constraints.
Yeah.
And it's actually incredibly, incredibly good for what it is. So yeah, so I kind of wanted to go back to that. So on the side of like a game I want to make, I want to play, or I want to make this micro RTS that's really fun, and the game sessions are 10 to 15 minutes kind of thing. As far as a game that other people want to play, by keeping the scope really tight and make it a game that people could just try, and if they have fun, they'll be like, oh, I immediately want to play that again.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm hoping to kind of plant that seed of watching people play. I learned a lot about Stranger Sips in terms of like capturing some basic metrics about like how many players are net new, how many people are repeat players, how like what's the total amount of time they're playing, just basic stuff like that, so you can see if like the adjustments you make are helping your end goal or not. And then as far as a game that makes money, frankly, I'm kind of surprised Stranger Sips even made $1 ever. So the fact that it made any money was kind of cool. And I think the biggest thing for me there is it just removed the fear that I would launch and it would make zero. And that didn't happen. And it's, it's okay for a first indie game. It's not great.
Yeah.
But hey, I did a thing. I asked people for money and they gladly gave it to me. And I was like, wow, it worked. I really should just believe in myself and focus less on the worry and more on, like you say, just the shipping,
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. That sounds really cool. I like all the arcade games. And I've thought about that a lot too, is if I was going to make a game, the project I most recently worked on was this tiny little music box that I was going to do on Playdate, which is just this little tiny handheld, simple Game Boy Square. And so I wanted something very simple that I could do in a couple of game jams and then ship. And I only ended up doing one game jam on it in like a half. And so it's like almost done, but not quite enough, because I want to be able to have, of course, then I think of new features to add. Oh, I want to be able to save or load melody that you create, or, export it, or anyway. And so basically, you use the D-pad to select your key, and then you press A to put down a note, and then you swirl the crank in order to actually twirl the music box. And then when they pass through the tines, then it'll hit the note. So it's like very simple. Anyway, the point of that was, if I do release a game, I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible, because we need to build up from the basics. And it's sort of one of those pieces where people talk about how when you're a consumer of a certain art, your taste for that art is much higher than your skill level at delivering or executing on that art. And so it's really hard to bridge that gap between what you can imagine and envision and what you can execute on, because you're not at that level yet.
That's true. That's so true. So many of my doubts going in were, I don't think this is good enough. I don't think this is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And while working on an older prototype, I went back and played one of my favorite games of all time. Diablo 2 Resurrected was released, which was released during a terrible time for Blizzard. It was, anybody that remembers that time, it was just like, I was afraid to mention that I was playing Diablo 2 Resurrected, because it was, it was basically like a social pariah, because people were hating on Blizzard so much of the time, which I get. But I was just like, hey, this is an old game I love, right? Anyway, point of that story is, I remember how great it felt to play it when it was first new, and how much fun it was, and how great I thought it was. And then I go back and play it this time, both trying to enjoy it, but also looking at it from a game design, like, what are the actual parts in this box? I was like, oh, this is just an incredibly good Skinner box that has a super tight game loop, and there's really not that much to it. It's like one or two game mechanics. Well, it's the loop of killing stuff and loot and go back and all that stuff. And then there's an outer loop for like skill leveling up, experience and skill. And then it's like the loot itself, collecting stuff.
Yeah. Upgrades.
And that's 95% of the whole game. And I think that was another big moment for me, where I was like, oh, this game that I love, that has this super high place in my mind, is actually so much simpler than I thought it was, or that I remember it was. Kind of gave me permission to, like you said, ship a simpler game and focus on, like, is it fun?
Yeah.
And if it's good and you can get in front of players, it'll be okay.
And it's even better from sort of a business standpoint, because if you were focused on, okay, wait, I need to make money with this, if you were taking a leap and wanting to do something, in order to make money, it has to be shipped. You have to ship it to make money. And so if you can keep the time to ship short, even if it sucks, you might still make some money, and then you can work on the next one. And if you can make your games fun but take less time to make them, so like think Flappy Bird, like people could make Flappy Bird. So if you just keep shipping, which there are whole businesses, which this is their model, is ship games as fast as possible and make as much money as you can, and then sunset them when they're done, which arguably that's what the AAA industry is doing right now, but we don't have to talk about that. But anyway, the point was shipping faster. If you were trying to survive off of the money from games, shipping faster will give you a better shot at doing that. There's all sorts of quality things you could bring up, but still, if you have a game shipped, that's better than not having a game shipped.
Yeah, and if you could ship a game that you only had to work on for a month, then you only have to make up a month's worth of costs for it to break even, right?
Exactly.
As opposed to my 2017 game, which is going to be 10 years old now, is not out, and I'd never make the money back, right? Like, yeah. I think it also helps to, or at least in my head, I hope it works this way, is if I keep shipping smaller games, but I keep building the base of people that like to come back for what I built, then you can make, the idea is you can kind of build that snowball a little bit over time. And when you release a game that takes 6 months or 9 months, you have, a few thousand people or 10,000 people that are already interested in what you've done. And it's a lot easier to try to get to that, get that ball rolling on that new thing.
Yeah, that's the power of branding too. And that's what I think social media does well, I guess, is helping you formulate a brand so that you have some group of people who is watching your stuff and interested in the stuff that you're doing. And then that sort of helps make everything a little easier in terms of selling something.
Yeah. Like my plan for the micro RTS is I'm actually vibe coding it. I could code it completely by hand, but I've stumbled into a workflow that works really well for me. And so I plan on the initial promotion is going to be some devlogs where I've been recording my programming sessions. And it's like, I'm going to show you the whole process and what role I play and how I work with the agent to get it to build the thing and whether I know it's right or not. And like, to what level do I go validate the code versus just making sure it works, that kind of stuff. And I think that'll be interesting. I've been waiting to finish the first playable prototype so I can be like, hey, new game's out. And then have a whole bunch of content lined up for here's how I built it. And then while I'm releasing that, I can also promote the game more directly, but also like the vibe coding stuff I'm recording is more about education. It's about like, hey, here's an example of a real live project that you can test that really works. If you're doing this in your career, if you're feeling the pressure to like adopt AI tools at work or whatever, like here's a specific concrete workflow you can see me go through 20 times.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So that's kind of my plan for that.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. I don't know if that exists already, but if it doesn't, it should, because that would give a lot of insight into, because I exited the job market right when all this stuff started ramping up. So I didn't have as much exposure to it. So I guess I don't know necessarily how much people are using it. And my information on it might be slightly outdated, but it definitely will be interesting to see how it all comes together from the whole slow version of like actually watching what it outputs and things like that.
Yeah. I started experimenting with this stuff about 3 years ago when it was not good. Right.
Yeah.
I could get it to write like a few tiny libraries. And I wound up designing over a dozen little tiny libraries that boil down to basically that it's one file, one class, the one specific thing. Like I wrote an in-process load balancer. Another one I wrote like a really tiny logging tool that's like way simpler than your typical Log4j and the sort of Swiss Army knife versions. So like a bunch of little utility things like that I would normally write, or I would normally build just
Yeah.
to make things easy. But 3 years ago, that's the scale at which you could do it. Like one class, one file, 150 lines max, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And now you can really iterate on it as if it's a pair programmer. I have yet to see it. Like when I get lazy and I'm just like, just go write this thing. For me, I'm tired of describing this to you.
Yeah.
Like it totally messes it up. And it's like, that was my fault. So I feel like I kind of got in the perfect place where I got interested in this early enough that I could see its limitations. And I was one of the people that's like, yeah, it's not ready. It's not ready. It's not ready. But then I'll give you a couple of examples that changed my mind. One is I've never written a mobile app. And one of my new hobbies I took on was running. And so I run pretty regularly. And of course, there's a million running tracking apps.
Yeah.
But because I'm crazy, I decided to write my own. And I'm in the Android ecosystem. I've never written a single line of Kotlin. And I have two apps. I have one that works on a smartwatch and one that works on my phone. And they're as reliable as anything I would build for work.
Yeah.
And I didn't write any of it, but I understand enough about how to break down a project. It's like, okay, I need a build script that will publish this thing and I can put it on the phone. I need to break down the features I want. I need to describe a couple of reusable things. And I was really shocked that at some point in the last 9 months or so for me, it kind of tipped that scale where, yes, I still have to work closely with it. But if I think of it as like I'm pair programming with someone that I'm also trying to teach, the way that felt, it seems to work. I won't say perfectly, but it works way better than I ever thought it would.
That's interesting. Because, the last time I checked in was probably 9 to 11 months ago. And I was pretty unimpressed. It's like, it feels like if you gave a project to an entry-level engineer, and maybe worse sometimes was about what it would do. Because, sometimes if you give something to an entry level, they don't necessarily understand a lot of the context around things, and they might solve it worse than if it's sort of like this is them learning how to do it as opposed to just getting the work done. And so it felt like it was going to be something very difficult to do much work on a regular basis. And I felt like the limitation was really, it'll give you anything that's very basic, that's everywhere, but it doesn't get you the ability to change some small specific thing. So you'd sort of get whatever running app, like, oh, well, it'll only give it to you in miles in this certain setup. And then you're like, actually, no, give it to me in kilometers. This is probably too easy of an example, but then it would be like, it failed. And then it messes everything up trying to fix just from miles to kilometers. And you're like, wait, you messed up everything. Like I wanted, and then you have to, I don't know. I couldn't figure it out, but it didn't seem very useful. So it's interesting that you're experiencing a huge shift in the last year, basically, which kind of would match with the changes we've seen in the AI videos, because sometime in the last year, the Sora and the AI videos and such have just gotten way better, which is kind of crazy and scary, I guess, but we'll adapt.
Yeah, I haven't played with the video stuff much, but I'm interested in that because ever since I was in high school, I always wanted to like make music videos for songs that didn't have music videos. And I'm curious to try that sometime, maybe next year, with one of these tools. And it's basically I can slice the music video into a bunch of small scenes. I mean, this is how a lot of music videos are. Like each shot is maybe 2 or 3 seconds long, and there's maybe 4 themes that are running throughout it, and they're sort of edited together in a way that's really compelling. Yeah. I'm hoping something like that will work, so long as I don't need a video of someone appearing to sing the lyrics. I'm going to pick a song that's like very thematic, and just do like an abstract kind of thing. But yeah, with the coding side, what I've found has worked is I think pair programming is like the best analogy I've found so far. Is I don't just ask the tool to build something. I first just have a discussion. I was like, okay, go read the README. It'll give you the code layout of the project. It'll tell you the main things, the features, and like what this thing does broadly. I was like, and when you're done with that, let me know. And I literally just talked to it like I'm talking to a person.
I was about to say, that sounds like an entry-level engineer. You're like, okay, first go read the docs.
And then I'd say, okay, now I want to add this new feature. It's adjacent to or similar to here. I want the navigation link to get there to appear in the menu, and it should be called this. And here's basically what the feature is and a couple of things. And we just talk about it and we plan it out. And the result of that after 10 or 20 minutes is I say, okay, now write a markdown file that has like step-by-step instructions of what you're going to do for my review. At this point, all it's done is taken context in and produced a plan. And then I read that plan, and that's the way we sync up. It's like when that plan is detailed enough and it aligns with what I would do, then that's how you know within that chat conversation that yeah, it has enough context to actually then build that thing.
Yeah. Did you come up with that technique on your own, or is that something that's within that community and how people approach that?
I stumbled into it on my own because I had similar experiences to you where early on I would try to just one shot stuff and I would describe it and it would sometimes come out really bad. And I just thought like, well, this thing is a giant text processor. So I guess I need to get everything in a text format. I was like, well, what if I try describing what I need in a markdown file? What if I do this? And it seems like a lot of other people have stumbled into it. Like I was just watching some videos last week about, there's of course a conference for everything. So there's like an AI engineering conference. And they talk about a lot of the same things and have gone further. But they're basically talking about like, yeah, basically talk to the agent as if you're having a design discussion with anybody else. Make sure you're both on the same page and that there's a detailed plan. I was like, oh, that sounds exactly like talking to another engineer. And it works way better than I ever thought it would. So yeah, we'll see. I'll release all the vibe coding sessions when the game demo is done. And
yeah, that'll be really interesting to look at. Because I've sort of poo-pooed on AI for a while now, but I'll have to reassess where it's at, like in terms of what it can get done. But I just sort of was like, I haven't seen it be able to do that much stuff. But so much has changed in the last year.
And it sounds like the worm business is taken off and you got time to dedicate to your book, and things seem to be firing on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great to catch up, and I will talk to you offline and catch up some more.
This has been the Wilderness and the Wellspring podcast. You can find me online on Twitter and Blue Sky under the username @JeffLuntGames. You can also find my website, jeffluntgames.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.